Thank you for being here, everybody. My name is Rodney Charles. Wow, that's a hard light. My name is Rodney Charles, and just for context, I'm the vice president of the African Artists Association, a nonprofit in Los Angeles. I'm also an actor, writer, director, producer, as has been mentioned, working internationally. So this is relevant because I hope to be speaking to, in my conversation with Luiz Toledo from Espesini, I'm hoping to be able to utilize that variety in my career, travels, etc., to really delve a little bit into the great work I believe Espesini are now doing in Brazil, and in so doing, really probably provide some opportunities that I'd like us in the room to utilize to spread the information to the people who may not have been able to make it today. Does that sound fair? Fantastic. So, Luiz, thank you so much for joining us. And let's just start with the basic question. What is Espesini?
Thank you. Thank you, Rodney. It's a pleasure to be here in such an important event. Espesini is a film promotion agency of the city of São Paulo. The city represents almost half part of the film industry of Brazil. So that's why it was decided some years ago to have their own film agency. So Espesini is responsible for several actions regarding the audiovisual industry. And by saying audiovisual, for us, we include as well games and XR. So our job comprises all the new technologies as well. We have in Brazil a very few cinema theaters when it comes to the comparison of average with the population. For example, in Mexico, they have a double number of cinema theaters comparing with Brazil. So that's why we have our own cinema theaters network, especially in the peripheral areas of the city. We have 20 screening rooms, and we are amplifying for more 10. In this year, we will reach 30 cinema theaters in the city. Apart from that, we manage a VOD platform as a way to promote Brazilian films, but we also screen other countries' movies as well. We have a training department since by developing the film industry, we need to develop as well our training capacities and make capacity buildings program in the city. This work is coordinated by Marina that is here. We have an observatory that generates data. Data is the key thing to us from the audiovisual sector to speak about our power, to speak about how deep and how much employments we generate in our sector, how much investment we are able to attract. So in our audiovisual observatory, for example, we conclude that the financing of local production that we do as well, by putting every reais in a film, in a project, we generate an extra of 20 reais for the local economy. So we are not spending money, we are investing in an industry. So this is very key for us. We have also an international department that is responsible for establishing international partnerships. For example, we signed an agreement with the South African National Film Agency to develop projects in co-production between São Paulo and South Africa. And we also managed to really foster the internationalization of the producers from São Paulo and also we have a cash rebate. So this is a very concrete tool to really improve the numbers of international productions done in São Paulo, as the incentive is a very current tool for governments to attract more production. This department is coordinated by Malila, that is here as well. So it's very important to say about the Brazilian context of economic and social figures. For example, as you probably know, Brazil's largest majority of the population are Black. We have 55% of Black population in Brazil. And
give us a sense of that scope. What's the overall population of Brazil, for example?
We have 220 million inhabitants. We have approximately the population of Nigeria.
Okay. Because I know we have very little time here, so I want you to get through all of this, and I'm going to try to drill down to the limited time we have. But I also don't want us to gloss over certain realities. Yeah. That's if you're talking about a population of somewhere 200 and plus
20
million. So I just want that to sort of sink in terms of the reality of what this means when Brazil is fostering co-production treaties with the diaspora and with international communities. So this is important, I think, that we outline this.
Yes, we are a massive consumption market in terms of number. And this is very important for other productions. But what we feel in Brazil by internationalizing our productions, that we have Brazilian movies in the all main film festivals. For example, here we have a Brazilian movie that was sponsored by Especini in the Encounters competition. This is a great movie, but the Brazilian works do not travel that much apart from the films and series done by VOD platforms. This is a very important thing to do. For a movie to be produced in Brazil, if plus $3 million, the only way the local producers have is by selling this idea, the whole package for the VOD platforms, and the Brazilian movie, the Brazilian idea becomes made in USA product.
Okay, so I want to touch upon something here because I want to find out exactly how important or how rigid the concept of language, Portuguese in this case, is to the specific case of co-productions, let's say, because we are at Berlinale after all, the EFM. So I'm very interested in knowing if I decide that I'd like to make a project, work with a Brazilian producer, and we're going to co-produce something that could shoot in São Paulo. So now at this point, does it have to be Portuguese language? And what are the options that exist?
This is a good point. For the cash rebate, to have the maximum money, we have the cap per project is $3 million. You must have another language apart from Portuguese. The only way we accept Portuguese is the Portuguese spoken in African countries. But this is the only reason we really want to engage international productions to go to São Paulo.
Gotcha. So if I'm coming from Angola, Mozambique, for example, it's permissible, but there's no barrier to entry from throughout France and Germany, etc. So it's very, very good to know. You mentioned, man, I wish we had more time. I can see where this is going, but you mentioned the streaming aspect of things. So I want you to speak to the Especini initiative that you guys created as a platform, or more importantly, how are the relationships through the funding mechanisms? What are the distribution options that are presenting themselves as the most viable? What works?
Yeah, we have our screening rooms and our VOD platform as a way to contribute for a broader distribution of Brazilian products in Brazil. We are now regulating the VOD, but we are also regulating once again the Brazilian quota for cinema. So, and this is a very open discussion right now. Is a very, very intense discussion. I think the better way to distribute, especially when we talk about distributing abroad, is really engage the Brazilian distributors and, of course, the international sellers, and put them in contact with the Brazilian cinematography that is very rich as well. The language could be a barrier, but all the Brazilian movies are able to be translated or doubled or subtitled in other language. So this is happening right now in a very strong way.
There are certain elements that I find, it's certainly my personal experience as a producer, there are certain elements that are absolutely necessary to have embedded into a deal structure, so to speak. So I just want to make it clear, as far as a co-production with São Paulo, are we talking about the need to, can I bring in, for example, German talent? American talent? Are there any adverse effects or are there limitations that you see from the international perspective? What are the things that I'd give the UK as an example. There are the cultural point system that exists in many parts of the world that most producers are familiar with. And so you have to have some relevance, some major relevance to the key territory that you're coming to ask money from and collaborate with. What are the specifics when it comes to that?
There is a rule done by the Brazilian film agency that oblige you to have 2/3 of the all workforce, talents and technicians. 2/3 must be Brazilian. But when we are talking about international production, of course, the talents, the actors and actresses can be foreigners, and this is very, very normal.
Gotcha. And in terms of, if I'd like to do something here, because I remember I did a little research on you guys, as I'm apt to do, and I understand that you, Espacini recently did something that's really interesting with the NFVF in South Africa. And I gather from my research that essentially you had something like close to 30 filmmakers from each sector. So the NFVF, South Africans, would bring in about 30 of their people, filmmakers, with projects to capitalize on the co-production treaty that's existing currently. And Brazil did a similar sort of number. And I'm really interested. In fact, there's a project that I looked and I realized I recognized one of the names there. There's a project called Zumbi, for example, which is done out of South Africa. Temba Sabeko is the director there. And I'm curious because this film, I want to know if I use that as a bit of a case study, what are you trying to achieve with that cross-pollination, this initiative to actually galvanize, to reach out and bring in international talent to cross-pollinate with your São Paulo Brazilian talent?
First of all, after signing this agreement, the both parts are fostering encounters, meetings, business meeting. Yesterday, we have a meeting with the South African agency with Brazilian producers. So we are engaging them to really have good projects. We all know that a film or series start by the script. And the script, in terms of price, in terms of cost, is the cheapest part of the film production. So that's why we really decided to put money first in the development, in the first parts of the scripts, to the work, to be able to get burned, but to really be, since they start an international co-production. So we put this point as an obligation to really have the first parts of the works. And another thing that is very important to say, we established the theme for the projects. So it must be about the African diaspora. So stories that link both parts of the Atlantic.
In this case, it seemed really interesting to me because he was telling a story about Zumbi, which is a Brazilian leader and quite a mythical figure, which seems to tie in quite interestingly with something like Shaka Zulu out of South Africa. Very similar sort of anti-colonial struggle for emancipation. So I was really interested in how that sort of situation best works. I guess, go ahead.
Well, I think because of slavery and the African diaspora with Brazil, we have so many stories in common. We have so many culture shared. If we take Nigeria, for example, we share a very strong culture. The Yoruba culture from Nigeria is very much linked to the Candomblé culture of Brazil. We are talking about a religion that is very spread in Brazilian society, not just for Black people, but also to white people as well. So this is a very strong point of in common. For example, if I take a very interesting story, Pelé, the famous Brazilian soccer, was responsible for an armistice during Nigeria's civil war in '69. In that time, yes, he went to Nigeria to play with Santos, that was his basic team. And they made an armistice. The two parts made an armistice to watch the game. So this is very powerful. We are talking about a culture, a very strong tide. So this is very important to be said, because I'm very confident that is not just about Nigeria. For example, the Togolese first rich societies was ancient and former slavers that come back to Togo after the end of slavery in Brazil. So this is a very powerful thing to be said as well. So we have so many other with the Portuguese speaking countries. So we have a lot of things to share. And I think when it comes to the development of the industry, together we are more powerful. Instead of having money from the VOD and transforming our product into an American product, we can combine forces, we can combine resources in order to really keep the IP, to hold the IP, to hold our project in our own hands. So I think this is a very important point to be said as well.
Well said. Now, I'm going to impose upon our newly formed friendship a little bit here, Luiz, because you brought up politics.
São Paulo é uma cidade muito plural, você tem de tudo, cidade, campo.
One of the things that, you worry about as you travel is sometimes not bringing your own crew into these different countries. But the crew in Sao Paulo was incredible. It was one of the best crews I've ever worked with. And the people were so loving and passionate about the art, which made the experience amazing.
Eu sempre me surpreendo em cada projeto que eu faço, descobrindo novos lugares, personagens interessantíssimos. Eu sou fascinado por São Paulo.
gravar na cidade de São Paulo é fazer parte da cultura da cidade.
And seeing in the day, in the night, just speaks to cinema and storytelling, and everyone involved in the project and ourselves are really excited to be here and to have the opportunity.
I still want to make one more film.
What film is that?
Who wants to go to São Paulo?
Great.
So I mean, there's so much that has been sort of suggested or answered in this particular piece that, you know, I think that we can see, you have one of your directors here and filmmakers here. And so we know that Brazilian cinema has a long, rich and lauded tradition. I'm actually now interested in the fact that there is, let's talk about the youth, the emerging, these markets, especially if we're talking about this special relationship that Brazil has to Africa. What we're seeing is that the vast majority of nations, the majority of their population is under 30. There's a very youth-driven market that needs to be kind of nurtured, developed, and very clearly kind of spoken to. I'm wondering, is there a particular outlook, is there a particular vision that specifically São Paulo region has when it comes to, and I'll give you an example so it's not so just ethereal. We have music coming from the African continent now, which is just dominating the planet. If we want to call it Afro beats or piano, whatever we want to call it. I'm wondering about the possibility in terms of that cross-pollination, maybe beginning with music videos and emerging into what naturally has always happened, cinema.
This is true. The last images of the video show Maluma, that is a very well-known singer from Latin America. And this video was recorded in São Paulo and has more than 1 billion views nowadays. So music and musical videos is a very powerful tool as well. We are looking for youth. We are fostering the youth participation in the Brazilian audiovisual cinema, but industry. But we are especially foster the participation of Black people, transgenders, and indigenous peoples because we have a very huge misrepresentation of race and also gender in the Brazilian film industry. So what we see is by making just a very small push, we open somebody's life in a very broad way. For example, we brought here 5 young talents, Black talents that are doing in presenting their first projects. And this is a very powerful moment. One among them is the first time that is traveling abroad. So can you imagine the impact of Berlinale that we'll have in the life of this guy? So this is a very powerful thing. And I think as government is our obligation to really empower the young persons of our countries to really represent more and to give this freshness in new ideas, to bring new ideas for our both audiovisual and musical industry.
So many questions that I have so little time, but I want to also just do a troubleshooting kind of question here. I want to know that in your experience dealing with the filmmaking community coming into São Paulo, what are some of the key areas that are the problem areas? What is it that foreign filmmakers may show up with? What kind of, what are the requirements that oftentimes you see not fully being met? What are the things? Can you give any advice?
I think after COVID and nowadays after the major strike of the U.S. Film industry, we are facing a shortage of technicians, for example, of infrastructure worldwide. That's why we need to invest more aggressively in trainings. We need to invest. We need to fund new infrastructure because we are facing a very huge number of production nowadays. São Paulo receives more than 1,000 film production every year. So it's very, very, the number is very huge. We have a film commission. Although São Paulo is very urban, very dense, we have just in the city 12 million inhabitants. Yeah, but we have a film commission, for example, to pre-establish all the requirements and procedures for the filming, and to establish, for example, the maximum number of days that you will get an authorization, a permit. So this is very key to have in a city as São Paulo. We are able, for example, to close Paulista Avenue is the most important avenue in São Paulo for
a city of 12 million.
Yeah, for a city of 12 million to make a movie. This is something that we are reaching by having a very strong film commission. So I think apart from the challenge, we have to create the tools to overcome the challenge and to give for the producers a very film-friendly city, very strong and powerful policies to attract international production, to keep having the training, to formate the audience of the cinema, to put people, especially the child, in the cinemas, back in the cinemas again, to really keep this very important industry very alive.
You mentioned audiences there, and I've latched onto that. One of my pet things is distribution, because I'm loath to have filmmakers, especially filmmakers of color, finish productions, or be they brilliant or mediocre. It doesn't really matter. They will find a way. And I'm really interested in just drilling a little bit more into what are the clear distribution options that may exist. In your experience as a commissioner seeing films come through, where are they finding the audience? This is a huge nation that you have. So how are we accessing them if we are co-producing with you?
The distribution is very key because apart from having a project, you have to have money to spread the news, to bring people for the cinemas and after for the VOD platforms. This is very key. I think the Brazilian industry, in terms of distribution, is still not that strong. We are funding distribution. For example, we are funding distribution and we have quotas for Black filmmakers, for Black producers as well, as a way to really reinforce more diversity in the film industry. But for example, I was in South Korea last September, and I saw there the distributors today are the one that are financing the productions. So this is a very opposite way from Brazil, for example, that first the producers fight against everybody to have their films done, and then start a new fight for distribution. And in Korea, for example, is the opposite. In America, in the United States, every dollar that you put in a production, you put the equal part in the distribution. For example, Spain last year decided that all the movies that was financed by the Spanish government have to have at least 12% of the cost of production to the distribution as a way to reinforce the importance of this distribution. I think distribution is a very key element and a very huge challenge talking about independent productions from Latin America and Africa as well.
Absolutely. I've been given the sign that we're out of time, as I knew we would run out of, but I just want you to, if you could, just give us an understanding of how best to reach out to you. What is the appreciated way to, one, get information concerning the various incentives and opportunities that you offer? If you could do that.
We have the cash rebate. We have an open call for cash rebate with this $3 million cap. We have. I invite everybody to really go to our social networks. We have a very active Instagram profile. SP as São Paulo, Cine as Cinema. SP Cine all together, and in a way to really contact us. We are at your disposal. We are very happy to talk with international producers. We try to do our best to provide every information in English, so all the details about our international programs, about the SPCine itself is done also in English. So we really want to reinforce the international content. Myself, I'm at your disposal, Malila as well, Bruno from our international team
Just
as well.
raise your hand so we can know who you are.
Marina, that is responsible for our training department. So we are really open to talk and to discuss more. It was a pleasure to be moderated by you, and a pleasure to be here.
Well, I don't know how it is for anybody else, but I'm willing to get rid of this coat and I'm off to São Paulo. So come join us. Please.